Good morning, everyone. It's Bree. This is not the video that I thought I was going to put out this weekend. I finally filmed my YA horror video and have been finishing up editing that, but I thought this was important and it's going to take precedence. For those of you who don't know, I live in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm in fact walking distance from a lot of the buildings that have been impacted in St. Paul by riots and looting. The Target on University Avenue that was looted is my Target, where I do my grocery shopping every week. The AutoZone that was burned down is where I get my windshield wipers repaired. And this morning I found out that my favorite bookstore in Minneapolis, Uncle Hugo's science fiction bookstore, burned to the ground. It's been a heavy week. My internet has gone in and out because of damage to roads and infrastructure. There are constant helicopters, sirens. It's not been a good week. And one of the things I saw this morning was a bunch of book bloggers, booktubers posting lists of Black authors and their works on Twitter, which is good. But it's not enough. It's not enough. I think one of the things that we struggle with here on kind of this more woke part of the internet that we all seem to have found is this idea that something like raising awareness can be a substitute for action. It's not. And I get it. Not everyone can go out in the streets and protest. Not everybody can make a stand in that way, and there are risks involved. But I also know that this is a community that is dedicated to its people, that believes in justice, and that really understands the value of challenging a system. Like I've said so many times, I think science fiction and fantasy really open you up to the idea that things can change, that you don't have to live a static life in a system that doesn't work for you. But in so many ways, that is a principle and not a reality. For so many people who are our neighbors and our friends and our loved ones, especially people of color, especially people with disability, especially people who are minority in one way or another, LGBTQ, whatever it might be, their voices aren't heard in the same way. And that's a problem. That means that I get to choose if my system changes, but they don't. And that's a problem. It's a problem that me reading and supporting people and authors and artists of color will not change. For as much as I encourage everyone to read books by authors of color, books that are informed by that lived experience, to read things that can open your mind to a different point of view that is not the predominant straight white male point of view. It's not enough. You know, my city is in chaos. And I can't say that I really think that everyone who is enraged is wrong. I don't think I can say that even a little bit. You know, our country here in America has had generations upon generations of painful relationships with Black citizens. And it's not changing. For as much as, yes, now, you know, my Black neighbor can vote, their experience with the education system, their experience with the economic system, with something as simple as finding housing and a job is so fundamentally different from my own, and that is a privilege that I have that they do not. And so it's not enough just to read and to challenge my own point of view. That's important, but it's not enough. Right now, I think if you are seeing the protests around our country over George Floyd, I think this is a time when you need to speak up. And you need to speak up for people whose voices will not be heard. One of the biggest privileges we have as white people, as people who are educated, as people who are informed and who have the luxury to spend their time reading, is that we're articulate. We have an authority with people who make decisions that other people don't, right? Simply by virtue of being somebody who can express themselves. You have that privilege. If you are educated and white, it is even more so. And so I think if you have the ability to speak up, you have the duty to speak up. Right now, not everyone is going to be safe when they go to a protest. I get that. I definitely understand that some of these are devolving really quickly into much more chaotic events than many are comfortable with. But there are things you can do. First and foremost, call your representatives, and don't just call your senator or your representative for the United States House. Call your city council. Your city council actually deals with your police. Your local district attorney deals with your police. Those are people who have a relationship and a capacity to change how things are done in your system. Local change is going to be how we make this change, I think, in many, many ways. If you can protest, I encourage you to. I think that this is worth going out and spending an afternoon of your weekend standing by people who believe what you believe and who are trying to make change. If you have the privilege to be able to go to Costco and buy, a couple packages of water, at least right now at mine, they were $2.99. I bought 4 for less than $20. Pass out water to people on the street who are also protesting, pass out snacks, whatever you can to help people, one, feel valued in their protest, and also to give them the longevity to protest as long as they need to. Stand by them in that way. If part of what you're looking at when you look at this system is a family member being like, hey, people who are rioting and burning right now are just thugs, right? That's something that a number of my family members have said now. They're wrong. When you don't have a voice, you scream, right? And there's so many people who the only way they have ever been heard in our community is through violence, is through radical change, is through shucking off the boundaries of our system and hoping finally someone will hear. That should be incredibly sad, but also something that we have deep support for, that we have compassion for, that we understand, and we see that as, if not ideal, we should see it for what it is, which is an attempt to be heard. Don't be afraid to have that conversation with your loved one. It's not an easy one. It's not easy to challenge people who see rioters as just pure thugs, pure criminals, who aren't understanding that there is a relationship between voice and what's happening right now, between the privilege of being heard and what is happening right now. Shop local where you can. It's going to help a lot of small businesses that are going to be hurt by protesting and riots, because I know that that's happening across our country. And demand change. Don't just ask for it to be vague accountability. Ask for men who do things like this, police officers who do things like this, to be prosecuted, to be sent to jail, and not just for a couple years, for a long time. I'm incredibly frustrated, and I know I'm not the most articulate about this, and I know that I come from a very privileged place. I am somebody who will never have to deal with racial violence, who will never have to deal with the inequities of just being born black or brown in America. But I see it, and I can demand that it stops. That at least is within my power. The other thing that I'm going to go ahead and do, I know we're talking about awareness and supporting artists of color. I think one of the things that is really fundamentally important is understanding what has gotten us to where we are today. I'm not going to go into a ton of recommendations, but I'm going to put some nonfiction books, just list them in my description, because I think that some of those might help you understand the relationship between police brutality and our communities of color, might help you understand some of the fundamental inequities that people of color face in America, and why no change seems to continue to happen. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, I'm sad right now. I'm angry right now. I want change so bad, and I hope you do too. And so I'm going to ask for it. I'm going to demand it, because sometimes people listen to a white woman before they listen to a black man, and it's not fair, but I am wrong not to use that power. Again, I'll put some recommendations in the description below. I'm also going to see if I can put some resources for finding your representatives. But stay strong, stay vocal, and not just this week, not just this month, until change happens. Much love.